Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into an ancient story, but we're not just looking at it as history. We're going to pull out three really powerful lessons on how to think, and you'll see just how relevant they are to everything going on today. All right, so we're talking about that famous showdown between the prophet Moses and Pharaoh. But here's the twist. We're not going to get bogged down in the historical or religious debates. Instead, think of this as a case study, a deep dive into our own thought processes. Now yeah, this story is from the Quran, but the lessons here, they're universal. They're not just for theologians. This is really a framework that can help us all think a little sharper, and maybe, just maybe, make a bit more sense of the crazy world we live in. Okay, let's jump into our first big lesson. And this one goes right for our gut instincts. You know that feeling when you see someone doing something just awful? The question is, what's the right way to respond? So here's the scene. Moses shows up with a clear message, backed by some pretty incredible signs. But look at how Pharaoh reacts. He doesn't even touch the substance of the message. Nope, he goes straight for the labels. Magician, liar. He attacks the person, not the idea. And this brings up a really fascinating question, right? For all the injustice happening, why not just bring down the hammer? Why send a messenger in the first place? Why bother with an explanation at all? Well, the answer we find in the source is mercy, an act of incredible mercy. The goal, it seems, wasn't just punishment. It was about offering a path to change, a chance at redemption, and that chance was extended to everyone, even Pharaoh. And this is really the core of our first lesson. Our gut reaction, our instinct when we see something wrong, is usually to want punishment, retribution. But this story flips that script entirely. It suggests a huge shift in our thinking, from how do we punish to how can we guide. It's about guidance, not just condemnation. I mean, just think about what that implies. If there was still hope for someone like Pharaoh, a guy with that much power, that set in his ways, then there's hope for any of us. And so often the real wall standing in our way isn't our past actions, it's our own ego. All right, that leads us perfectly into lesson number 2. And this one is about a mental trap that, let's be honest, we all fall into from time to time. The incredible and sometimes really dangerous power of labels. Look at Pharaoh's move here. Again, he completely sidesteps the truth Moses is presenting. And what does he do instead? He calls for violence against a whole group of people. And what defines that group? A single label: those who believe with him. He's not punishing an action, he's punishing an identity. But here's a really challenging thought the source brings up. Could you somehow justify what Pharaoh did as just maintaining law and order? It's a pretty chilling thought, isn't it? It shows just how easily horrific things can be explained away. And this isn't some dusty, ancient history problem. Just think about the labels we hear thrown around every single day, in the news, on social media. These words are powerful. They're mental shortcuts that can totally warp how we see people, and worse, they can make it way too easy to accept injustice. And that brings us to the key insight here. Slapping a label on someone doesn't change whether an act is right or wrong. The source points to something as stark as the Holocaust. Genocide is genocide. It's a monstrous act, and it doesn't matter what label you put on the people you're hurting. And this is why the Quran puts so much emphasis on this idea of righteous deeds. It's basically a call to be good in a way that goes beyond all the labels and all the groups. It's about doing good just because it's the right thing to do, for everyone, not just for your people. Okay, so for our third and final lesson, we're going to pivot a little. We've talked about how we see others. Now let's talk about how we see ourselves. This is all about choosing humility instead of pride. So when Moses is standing there, face to face with Pharaoh's overwhelming arrogance, what does he do? He doesn't puff out his chest and talk about his own power. No, his very first move is to humbly turn to a higher power for protection. That's such a powerful demonstration of humility, right? Moses gets it. His strength doesn't come from his title or his status as a prophet. It comes from his reliance on God. He knows that on his own, he's got nothing. And this highlights a really subtle but super important difference in how we think. You can say, we are Muslims, and that's a statement about identity. It can easily lead to pride. But saying, we depend on God, that's a statement of humility. It's about reliance. See the difference? One is about what you are, the other is about who you depend on. So the takeaway here is that true belief, true faith shouldn't make you arrogant. It shouldn't give you a feeling of being better than anyone else. If anything, it should lead to this deep sense of gratitude and humility. You start to see faith not as something you achieved, but as a gift you've been given. All right, so we've walked through this incredible ancient story. Let's pull it all together. What are the big ideas we can take with us that might actually make a difference in how we think, starting right now? We've really looked at three huge mental shifts. First, moving from wanting to punish to wanting to guide. Second, making a real effort to see past the labels and recognize the person underneath. And third, embracing the quiet power of humility instead of the loud noise of pride. And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on, a question for all of us really, no matter what we believe. It's this: if your beliefs don't make you more humble, what do they make you?